Well, joining me right now is head men's and women's cross country and head and women's indoor track, outdoor track. A lot of titles for you, Leroy, but we're glad you're here with us today.
Good to be here.
Well, the one thing I want to talk to you a little about is just, with these interviews, a lot of times I'm talking to folks that I've known for a really long time, but with you, we have our newest coach. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, you started last year as a volunteer assistant with the track and field programs. Now you're moving into the head coaching position, but you're not exactly a stranger to this region. So why don't we start out with you just telling us a little bit about your background?
Well, I was born and raised in Bristol. Actually, and that's the funny part where you're born in Bristol, Tennessee, but because the hospital. And sometimes I get confused with where the hospital actually was. I think it was in Virginia, but it might have been in Tennessee. We lived in Tennessee.
It's Tennessee.
Okay. Well, it is now, but when I was born in 67.
Well, you're not that old, Leroy.
Yeah, I kind of am. Sorry. But back then I think it was in Virginia, like right across from the mall. But I don't know. Anyway, it's that whole thing. We lived in Tennessee, but wherever the hospital was, Bristol's Bristol. So, born and raised in Bristol, started out in Tennessee schools. Then we moved, I think it was my sophomore or junior year, and ended up in Virginia High and finished at Virginia High. So had a great opportunity at both schools, in both school systems, and ran track in both school systems, but only ran cross country at Bristol, at Virginia High. So
what was your specialty?
Hurdles, for the 110s and the 300 hurdles, and then I long jumped a little bit and did whatever Coach Merle, Coach Davis asked me to do.
What happened to you after high school? Where did your career kind of take you?
It was one of those things where truly didn't have a plan, but Coach Davis stayed in contact because he left the area and moved up to Northern Virginia, and checked in on me, asked me what I was doing, what my plans were. When I told him I didn't have any plans really, he made some phone calls for me, and then Coach Helmer in Southwestern called me and asked me if I was interested in continuing my education and college career out there in Kansas. Said yeah, because you got to do something, right? So went out there, and it was interesting at first because, of course, the cultural difference between Virginia and Kansas was it was a learning curve, to say the least. But Coach Helmer and the program, very well organized, very well established program, just took me in and built me up from where I was, and continued to teach me about being a competitor and being a coach eventually. So that was the best move that ever happened to me, was going to Southwestern and running for Coach Helmer.
What happened after Southwestern? I mean, where'd your career go next?
Education-wise, it didn't go anywhere. Moved to Denver, thought I wanted to be in the Midwest a little longer. That didn't take too well. So then came back to Bristol, and tried to get back into the school system in Bristol, Virginia. Volunteered coaching, and then did some, because teachers, when they get their job and in a small school system, it's tough to get into the system. So did whatever was needed to be done for a few years and coached, and then got a call from Coach Davis saying, hey, we're getting ready to open a new school in Prince William County. Would love to have you come up and, start the program with me. And you usually don't say no to Coach Davis. So I went ahead and went up there, and that was the right decision at the time too. We had great programs at Virginia High, but it was a good time to make that change and go up to Northern Virginia, where we were going from Virginia High at the time was 1A, and Prince William County, everything up there is 3A, which is now 5 and 6A for Virginia, since we went to 6 classifications. Completely different world for the sport. Competitively, you better strap it on and run way faster than what we were running down here. Coaching wise, you have to reach the kid on a different level to get him to compete at that. I mean, because Noah Lyles, who's now a world-class athlete, and we were competing against those guys. So those, just getting your kids to rise to that occasion was a whole different ball game. But sometimes it happened, and sometimes you were like, what are we doing? So, and that's the sport of cross country and track and field. Your day might be today, but it might not be but for a month from today. So you just keep working and keep working the plan and keep, doing what you need to do.
Talk to me a little bit about the last few months. I mean, obviously you weren't expecting an opportunity to be a head coach at a college this soon, I'm imagining. So what has that transition been like for you? And was coaching collegiately something that was ever really on your radar?
Yeah, I had always thought about coaching collegiately. Just this transition, though, was a surprise. Was expecting to work under Coach Kegley a little longer. But then when I was asked to fill in the role, it was probably the right time and in the right situation. It's just I'm learning with the virus and everything we're going through right now, I need to slow down because can't hit the pavement like we normally would and go to track meets and meet athletes and, build those relationships with coaches and parents and everything that needs to go with recruiting. And right now it's been interesting reaching out to people and, not having that normal background that you would have with a person by this time of the year. So it's teaching myself to slow down, focus on who's on campus now, what we're doing now, and then just one step at a time. Don't try to do too much too soon.
How much have you really thought about sort of, now that you're able to kind of put your thumbprint on the program, kind of what you're trying to build with both the track and field and the cross country programs?
Well, Emory's already established a tremendous history of throwers and have had good distance runners in the past. We just have kind of missed that sprinting talent. It's on campus with the football team and some of the kids that are on campus. But it's one of those things we've talked to Coach Crutchfield about. Would love to see more track athletes on campus, kids that are specifically interested in track and cross country. It's because it's just better for the program. If football wants to have spring practice or spring training, you look at losing half your team to spring training. So it's just a better situation. I mean, truly we can help each other and always want to try to help each other, but it is a better situation if we have athletes on the campus that are there for the programs and focusing on the programs.
I feel like that's something that's changed in the D3 model from even when I attended Emory, is that I think it was a little easier to be a two-sport athlete, but I think that the competition level, especially with the ODAC, it's just at such a high level that you seem to have people that are really focused on the discipline right now.
Yeah, noticing the level of athletes in the ODAC and the size of some of the teams in the ODAC was really impressive during this indoor season. So yeah, right now track is one of those things where even if you are loaded with talent, if you don't have the right numbers, you're still going to get outscored. So we've got to find the perfect blend of talent and numbers while we're building, our program and our athletes to be the individuals that we want them to be academically and socially, just to get there in the way that is appropriate for everybody, not try to go too fast and leave anyone behind or not get it right because we want to get it right.
With that in mind, what are some of the goals that you kind of are setting for yourself and the teams as you look to the next competitive season?
Focus on who we have, learning our current athletes, getting them to their potential, and then letting the rest of, the possible recruits or whomever see that we're doing things the right way. We're building the program in the right way. and hopefully more people want to come join us, be part of the Emory family, and just take it one step at a time. But try to keep it in a positive way going forward.
Because we didn't have any cross country or track meets last year, I didn't actually get a chance to see you coach. I think I've seen everybody else on our squad on the coaching sidelines. So I guess I have to ask you, how would you describe your coaching style? And I'm wondering how you would think some of your former athletes would describe your coaching style.
We work really, really hard at practice, setting things up, and I see myself as the coach that we do it, prepare it for practice, but I want to enjoy you in competition, and sit back and enjoy the work that we put in at practice during the competition. Will you need me occasionally? Probably, and yes, we will adjust that. But I'm not the coach that we got to do this, we got to do that. We've already talked about the game plan. Now it's time to implement the game plan. But if you need me, I'm here. But I'm not going to be in your face all the time. You got to do this, you got to do that. We make adjustments as we need to make adjustments, and we just keep moving forward.
Like a lot of former athletes, you're probably a pretty competitive person, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
How hard is it for you to be patient right now? Because the reality of the situation is that, especially with the track and field and cross country programs, is that cross country obviously has been a little bit more established in the past, but track and field is still so brand new. So how do you kind of calm yourself to a point to say, this is going to be a process and we're not going to see the great success that we want to achieve overnight?
Yeah, it was, being on the staff this year was very beneficial. I was in charge of the jumpers this year, and unfortunately we only had 2 jumpers. But it was one of those situations where those 2 jumpers are going to be the best jumpers we've ever had for for what we have. So just focus on them, build them up to be who they can be. And then next year, move forward with whatever we can add to the situation.
We've been talking a lot about track and field. You mentioned cross country earlier. I think a lot of people, and I think I could probably be guilty of this as well, thinking that it's an easy transition. But it seems like earlier you mentioned that it's not one of those things where cross country is necessarily a cross country runner doesn't necessarily step on the track and have success there.
With the difference is cross country, you have one distance. Now the course is going to be different every weekend or every meet, but you have one distance. With track, you might have a cross country runner that actually ends up being an excellent 800-meter runner or even 400-meter runner, but they can also run the 15, the steeple, the 5,000, the 10,000 in college. It's just so wide open when you go from cross country to track, and finding the right fit for that athlete may take you a minute. But that's one of the great things about the sport. The athlete has the opportunity to find the best fit for them, and not worry so much that, they have to run the same pattern, or, they have to catch the pass in the right way. They can move around and find what's best for them.
When I look across the coaching landscape, I feel like track and field and cross country might be one of the most challenging from my stance, just because, you've got a coaching staff, you've got a great assistant coach and Nathan Magstad, who's been with the program now for a little while. Coach Caro, our strength and conditioning coach, also helps out with the throwers. But there's so many disciplines, and we're going to continue to grow those disciplines over the years. How do you manage all those? Because a lot of times you're coaching folks in disciplines maybe that are not your specialty.
Yeah, it's one of those things, my coaching career has been one where I've had to coach every event at one point in time. Of course, there's events in college that we didn't have in high school. But you stay up on what the current patterns is with coaching and coaching events. You continue to educate yourself. I mean, if you think you know it all, you're not doing your kids any service, because there's always something new. Doesn't mean you always need to try it, but there's always something new, and you just keep going with what to develop the athlete as best you can, both physically and mentally.
And finally for you, Leroy, I know right now that, we're all anxious to get back on campus. I mean, how are those juices pumping for you to get out there and to get with your athletes and start the competitive season?
Very much so. It's one of those things where I probably bug Coach Crutchfield very much, asking, how do I do this? How do I do that? Where can I do this? Where can I do that? It's one of those things where normally we would have gone over all this stuff because we would have had time to be face to face and in her office or, wherever the case may be. But it's like, I'll be sitting and think about something and I'll shoot her a text or, shoot her an email and say, what about this? What about that? And then the other day I caught myself, you need to slow down. This is not going to happen overnight. It's not something that you can force on people. Just need to slow down, take it one step at a time, start focusing on who we have, and just build the program from there, because when the people see that we're doing the right things in the right way, they'll want to join us.
That seems to be a pretty good philosophy to have, and something that's pretty common to a lot of successful teams around the Emory and Henry campus. So, Leroy, I know I'm excited to get on campus and to see you there and to see the teams, but I appreciate you spending a few moments with us.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.